It's brilliant being a developer. He's able to see a lot of errors and fix.
You look like a technical guy that very detail oriented and you like to solve puzzle and understand how things work.
And that's something that with the developer mindset you kind of have to adopt anyway. That's it.
We try to always try to implement the same approach and eventually it's not going to work.
Obviously all of these URLs are about to change and you're talking like 10,000 URLs.
But if organic is like over 60% of the traffic, then you have to be very, very careful.
Extra careful. Hi guys, it's Karl from Search.ru and today I'm joined by Lewis, I'm going to call him because we've just had a conversation on this and he told me that if I don't continue calling them the way that I would normally call them, I'll end up just messing it up midway. So we'll call them Lewis from now on for the rest of the podcast. Lewis, how are you doing?
I'm pretty happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So Lewis is like a guy we've probably met about 3-4 years ago. It's been a good few years now, hasn't it?
We met in July 2023 in Birmingham.
There we go. Good memory, you see. Good memory. What's that? 2 years then. 2 years ago, give or take. And he's probably one of the most advanced SEOs that I know. Obviously, on par with the likes of Corey and stuff. You are what I would say is one of Corey's top students, right? And obviously, technical SEO, developer come SEO, right? So you were a developer first, and then you've sort of went into the SEO world and started mopping up.
That's right.
Doing a lot of technical SEO, fixing servers, obviously because he has the background, which I think is brilliant, being a developer, he's able to see a lot of the errors and fix. What programming language was it originally?
A PHP.
Excellent. So although he's not as advanced as a Python developer, that's all I'm going to say. Obviously, Corey's a bit of a Python nut, isn't he? But
Yes.
yeah, because he's got that mindset, I think one of the key fundamentals for becoming a successful SEO is the ability to pragmatically fix things with a developer's mindset, I think. And I think that's sometimes what's missing when you have like wild cards in the mix, like Dooley and stuff like that. It often causes more chaos than it does, I don't know, structure, let's say. And he often doesn't understand those elements either. So that then causes even more chaos. But yeah, so why don't you get started? Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and what made you get into SEO.
Well, as you mentioned, I was a developer in the past, around 7 to 8 years in the field. I was working in a marketing digital agency, and a colleague of mine at that time said, "Hey, why don't you test or why don't you experience SEO because you look like a technical guy that very detail oriented and you like to solve puzzle and understand how things works." And I started like kind of engagement with SEO, just solving issues that the marketing agency sent to me. And from that moment, I started to get more and more engaged with the SEO. Firstly, technical. I mean, the first 2 3 years was purely technical SEO audits, and then I realized that everything is connected, like link building, code, web performance optimization, and everything else. After I would say 6 to 7 years in the SEO, 3 years ago, I switched to Semantic SEO. Basically, a random video on YouTube on the right side bar said something like Semantic SEO training, something like that. And the first video Korai published on his YouTube channel when he announced the Semantic SEO course, that was the first moment I knew about Semantic SEO. And since then, what I've done is, going to events, meeting people like you, and meeting other guys in the field and learn a lot. And let's say now I combine the technical SEO background, developer background with semantic SEO. That, as you mentioned, I think it was the key to understand more easily, a bit more easily, the Keras framework, because at the end of the day, it's nothing more than a relational database or a graph representation of information. That's the simplest definition I would say about the semantic SEO.
And that's something that with the developer mindset you kind of have to adopt anyway.
Yes, I mean, it's like concepts such as subject, predicate, object, or entity, attribute, value is nothing more than the relationship between databases,
Yeah.
nothing more.
Yeah. So basically connecting the dots essentially is
Yes.
help it understand. So I'll be the guy who tries to make it in layman terms for if people are watching and they're not as technical. And if I get confused, God help them all. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah. So when it comes to so you've went into, I assume at that point were you employed by whatever, or were you always doing the freelance bit?
No, I was a developer for around 8 years,
Yeah.
and then I switched to SEO. My first experience was working in a SEO consultancy business for a year. The only thing I did was technical SEO audits and understand the, let's say, the semantic SEO and the link building, and how that three, let's say, three pillars: link building, semantic SEO, technical SEO, and on-page SEO at that time was the three pillars in order to grow the traffic. When I realized that I could make more money as a freelancer, that was 9 years ago. I said, "What am I doing here?" And then I switched to freelancer. And since then, I don't think I'm going back to ever,
And I'm
because it's,
guessing it allowed you a bit more flexibility in where you work. You can try. I know you do travel quite a bit, like myself. You know, it gives you that flexibility to see the world a little bit as well, right?
yeah. And on top of that, that open your mind to new ideas. It's funny. I'm reading now a book. One of the chapters I read yesterday, it was try to avoid tunnel vision, because as humans, when we like what we learn and it works,
That's it.
we try to always try to implement the same approach, and eventually it's not going to work, and you need to switch. You have to get rid of your old ideas
That's
from
kind
time
of
to
like
time.
the methodology I've adopted with SEO. To be fair, I'd never ever. I don't. If I'm being personally honest, I don't even think I'm an SEO. I know a bit, and I can fit. I like to say I'm a bit of a. I can fiddle with a website, and it seems to start to work. But a lot of the time, it is guesswork. A new industry, a new niche. You are guessing at the start, and then you wait until the data comes in, and then that data helps you build a bit more of a template. But it always varies. Like I've literally done it across multiple niches where I've thought this strategy will work brilliantly in this niche, and then I've done it and it does not work at all. Like not at all. And it's like, oh wow, that's changed.
Yes, now I don't remember the source of information, but nowadays SEO, I think that it was correct when he said SEO nowadays is more like a business development profile, because you have to combine product with technical SEO, with PR campaigns, with marketing, with content, with social media distribution. So nowadays, I approach SEO more like a business development.
We had a call earlier, and it was a guy who, he's going through the mill of SEO agencies anyway. He asked me for some advice, and I'm like, well, I was like, for a start, I can see the SEO agency's done absolutely nothing. And how long have you got these in play for? Like, he showed us the search console. The search console was actually like way higher 16 months ago before this agency got in than where it is now. So I'm like, right, you're in a negative ranking state. And your impressions are dwindling, your clicks are dwindling. They've done nothing for 16 months because I can see this. He's still got like, it was like a WordPress site, and he's still got all the standard, like, like categories where it's like archive and all of this, like all of
Yes,
that's still the same. I'm like, yeah, you've been paying these decent money for 16 months. What are they producing? And he's just like, oh, I have no idea. I don't know. And I'm like, "Oh." But then I'm saying, well, look, this is where, as an SEO, for his sake, they should be coming in play. They should be fixing technical errors to start with. looking at the crawl server logs, where the crawlers are hitting. Is there any blocks in the like blocking the crawler? Is it getting stuck on old historical stuff that isn't there? Um, then from that, they should be setting up tests. They should be testing, adding elements to the page, tracking impressions in Search Console and clicks, seeing what keywords are coming in. Like all of this data, you should be every month being presented with, oh, these are all the tests we've run this month, and here's the improvements, or here's the losses. There should always be losses as well. I'm like, at the end of the day, it's an over time game that will compound. It's not, you can't look at it just month one. And he's like, in about half an hour, he's like, mate, I don't think I've ever had an SEO company explain this to us. And I'm like, it's because most of them unfortunately just give a report. Like they just give a report, and it's a sad thing in the industry, and it's what I was saying to him. It's a very sad thing to see, but the reality is, it is a boring job. Like we enjoy it. I assume you enjoy
Yes.
it as well. But if anyone was to actually watch what our day to day is, you'd think, by God, that is boring.
Yes, maybe because people don't spend the time to realize that nowadays it's so easy, at least with SEO tools, and you have a little bit of interest. It's so easy to check if something has been done in a website or not, and how long or what was the last time that something changed in a website, things like that. And with Search Console and Google Analytics and all these tools, you can at a glance realize like, hey, this site has been obsolete. I mean, nothing have changed here for a long time. I mean, you can also test it in, let's say, most sites. I would say a considerable percentage of sites are WordPress, and just checking the version
Mhm.
of the WordPress, you can go back in time and say, I mean, this site hasn't been taken care of for months or years.
So what's interesting with the WordPress angle? So the same guy is about to go through a site migration, and let's say your opinion. I'm not going to say my opinion, but let's see what your opinion on this. So he's currently URL structure is the your standard in WordPress, and it's like product hyphen category forward slash category name forward slash product or whatever. And then his actual products are just forward slash product forward slash product name. That makes sense? So he's wanting though to have it so it's forward slash category forward slash product name. The nicer way of having it, right? Not having to have all that extra product type and category crap in. But at the same time, he's getting a website redesigned. So the whole theme will change. And at the same time, obviously, all of these URLs are about to change, and you're talking like 10,000 URLs. Now, obviously, what would you advise from that point? What would your advice be to him at that stage?
Is the same domain or a different domain?
Exact same domain. Yeah, exact same domain.
Okay, if it is the same, what I would do is first understand if what I call or it is called the 80-20 rule. If 20% of the pages get 80% of the traffic, yes or no. Or to understand what pages gather most of the traffic. Because if you're going to change the whole site, it's going to be more costly than if you change only a section, or let's say the pages that do not gather traffic. So if you don't change the core and improve and keep the same URLs, it's likely more profitable long term because it could be like kind of starting from zero or almost zero. Besides that, I would try to understand if the brand powerful enough or not. What percentage of
I
brand
guess
terms?
in terms of crawl rate, just obviously because I only have search, I don't have server logs to actually see like where it gets about 5,000 visits a day from the crawlers. It looks like, give or take.
Okay, and now I would like to understand the brand terms versus non-brand terms.
Crap. Terms are not very good at all.
Okay,
Not really a big brand.
okay, we have around 10,000 URLs, no brand terms, around 5,000 clicks a day. URL structure is not the best. Also, another KPI would be average price per sale and amount of sales per month. Also, bestseller product. in order to understand if they have like a one seller product that sell like 80% or generate like a huge percentage of the revenue. Because and when I have all that information, I would decide, because brand signals nowadays is very powerful. And if you mess up with some URLs, but you have the power of the brand, I will start from scratch. But if you don't have brand terms and you have to start from scratch, unless you generate the perfect topical map with the perfect URL,
It's gonna hurt.
everything perfect, and then on top of that, when you do the changes and all the redirects, you need extra link building in order to give extra power. Unless you have the budget, you have the knowledge about the all the details about the redirects, and on top of that, you have the perfect topical map, I wouldn't do it.
It's what it's essentially what I was alluding to, but they're doing it, like they are doing it. And I was like, if I'm being 100% honest, if you, I wouldn't, the problem I see this time and time again is people do too much at once.
Yes.
I always try to explain Google. Google gets a template of your website, it understands, based off a template of the site, and then you're about to fully change that template. And not just fully change it, you're going to change the entire theme architecture because he's changing themes and everything. You're going to then also change all of the URLs. So you basically just destroy the template, and then you're going to trigger loads of errors because there's going to be loads of 301s, hopefully, if the company that's there does it right, which based off what I've seen, I don't think is doable. And I was like, if I'm being honest, I was like, I would do a step by step strategy. I would implement the URL changes now. That's the same theme as there. Slowly introduce the URL changes so it starts to understand the new structure. At the same time as increasing better links and stuff like this. And then once the URL structure and the crawl rate stabilizes again, would then look to swap the theme.
I would add on top is like I would do it section by section. And another metric I would include is what's the percentage of organic traffic in the overall traffic of the site. Because if it is a huge percentage, you have to be even more careful. If it is like, let's say, less than 25%, like nowadays, I started working in March with a brand where organic traffic is the fourth source of traffic. They have like direct traffic, pay per click, email marketing.
Social? Have they got social?
Social is even stronger than organic. So, and that's no problem. But if organic is like over 60% of the traffic, then you have to be very, very careful.
Extra careful. This is what I was saying. I was like, the amount of times I've looked at websites, and like a good friend of mine, he probably won't mind the same, but he owns like an e-commerce store, and he went from Magento, that's what he was on, which we all know it is a brilliant e-commerce engine, but it is messy and clunky and heavy. And he was ranking for all sorts. I think about 2 million organic traffic, like big site. Swap to Shopify. Oh dear. Over 350,000 4
Yes.
that he had to start trying to fix, but obviously couldn't fix them quick enough. And his website literally just like boom, tanked and slowly starting to recover now, but very. And the problem is because it tanked so bad, he then doesn't have the budget to spend on link building. I'm like, it's a two-pronged sword now because if you're doing a site migration, you should also have a decent budget aside to plow loads of links in because you want, justification for Google to revisit that website and re-index it all essentially is what you're asking because it has to understand and create a new template. And just people don't seem to understand this. And it's crazy because that's what I also consider, and you've probably seen it yourself, Lewis, when you check server logs, and let's say you found a cluster in the server logs that just isn't getting much love, doesn't seem to get much impressions, stuff like this, and it's a little cluster down here. You build a couple of decent links to that cluster, and all of a sudden, boom, it just like skyrockets that cluster, right? And that's what I think people don't put the two and two with link build. Like they don't do the connection of you're actually helping feed the crawler, helping, it understand the template. That's what I like to say. That's what link building essentially is for.
Yes, and as you mentioned, you have to be very careful, especially with big e-commerce. If you are just switching the framework, but you're not changing the domain, and on top of that, you're changing the whole technology in the whole site. It's like very costly for Google because I mean, imagine like using these situations, in this occasion, the analogy of you are moving from one house to the other, where you have to not only move from one place to the other, but let's say you have to communicate with all your friends your new address, and you have to move everything, all the furniture and everything, and put it in order in the new house. So imagine that if Google have to do that with probably thousands or hundreds of thousands of sites every single day.
Yeah.
From a, even though technical but logistically way of thinking, is like very costly because you have to recrawl every single URL again,
Yeah.
which is cost for them. And if there are probably a few dozens competitors in that niche, why should Google worry about your site when there are other 10 sites that can offer the same product or service?
Look, that's exactly what I was saying. I was like, look, in this example as well, like he has like category pages that they don't rank amazing, maybe page two or page three, but they've never had a title tag change. They don't even have a paragraph of text on, like nothing. Like it is just a shop for, and I'm like, mate, you need to start developing some content on these categories. You need to be doing internal linking. Product pages should internally link back up to the top level category. There should be a breadcrumb navigation. There should be something. I'm like, there's so much to change on this site. I was like, personally, I would just do it step by step, improve the site as you can, as much as you can. Obviously, install some type of, I don't know, do you use any tracking tools like SEO testing or SEO crawl? Have you heard of that one? Where
No.
you can essentially you might use BigQuery for it, but I don't go into BigQuery. But you can essentially annotate onto the SERP and say I've edited this page. I've put whatever changes, and then it will track the impressions and clicks and what other keywords might come in for that specific page.
Hmm.
And then it'll email you the test data of like, oh, this test seemed to have a positive impact after 7 days or 14 days, whatever you set. So it's a pretty cool way of doing it because you can always be constantly testing and trying to improve. And I'm like, this is what you should be doing, all of this. And he was just, yeah, it was just funny, 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 funny. Let's continue down that rabbit hole then. So this website is in a negative ranking state, but it's, I would say, more neutral stroke negative. It's not like hemorrhaging like we've seen, sites that have been hit by HCU and stuff where they've, yeah, it's almost like flatline. This one still gets decent, but it's not really in a positive one. What would your first steps of attack be?
What I would try to understand is in the pages that are already gathering traffic, I always start with the question, what am I missing? What is missing? Which is, I go to firstly the mental SEO checklist, and I try to assess if there are opportunities to keep growing or keep gathering more traffic in that landing pages. Today, I did a publication on LinkedIn where we have been working for 2 years in a landing page,
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that.
the insurance business, and everything we've done is to fine tune what we have.
The one that's like 10, it was 10 clicks a day. Now it's hundreds.
Yes. So what we did was to fine tune the page, and we have all the what we do is we track all the minor changes we do in every single page. So we can assess in 3, 6, 9 months if the changes we did were successful or not. Let's say what we do coming back to your question, is first assess the pages that have potential, identify those SEO optimization that are missing, and try to get a little bit more boost from those pages, and then filter the sites by category pages, product pages, and so on and so forth. I would say, do we have potential here? Yes or no? And then I would start with the most powerful in order to get the boost of traffic. And then I would, if the migration is inevitable, what I would do, hey, let's save this bag or this batch of pages because these ones are going to be the most likely are going to keep gathering the traffic unless demote or kill the pages that do not have that much potential and focus their resources in what is more likely to work
Yeah.
and do not spend time, resources, content, and anything else in the pages that are very unlikely. And then balance the budget and the resources and hopefully get good results.
So let's say I'm playing devil's advocate here because I'd be interested to hear your answer though. Let's say it's a dog training website,
Mm-hmm.
dog products, toys, whatever, chew sticks, stuff like that. And let's say we found chew sticks as the best cluster. So we're now evaluating this chew sticks section, might be a collection, chew sticks, and then obviously the individual products. So we see that the impressions are pretty high, clicks are all right, and you're now thinking, right, I need to expand on this. You've noticed that there's maybe some keywords that are missing. Do you add those keywords to the top level collection page? Or do you try to create sub pages within the cluster first to test to see if that improves it?
Yes, we're now going to approach this per question such as a statistical, linguistic, and distributional semantic issue, which is again, I start with the question, what am I missing? Which means in the content, what am I missing? First, let's say is a category product. I'm gonna evaluate the entity itself, which is the product, and I'm gonna say, okay, we have the template. What attribute am I missing in the entity? And then I would optimize that. I would optimize the whole section, not creating more content, but again, optimizing what I already have. Like maybe I'm more frequently.
Shape, color, like all of these attributes.
Yes, I mean, it's like, do we cover the price? I mean, do you remember the presentation Karai did in Chiang Mai last year when he approached the product and he said it was kind of, okay, we have the product, and do we cover the price? Do
Yeah.
we cover the colors?
Yeah.
Do we cover the description? Do we cover related products? So you go step by step at the checklist, and in that process, I'm pretty sure you miss something. I mean, do I have all the information in the product? It doesn't matter if it is the feed from the provider, whatever. And I start thinking like, okay, what information is missing here that is going to be useful both for the search engine and for the user. And then from there, I begin researching. Maybe it is structured data. In the e-commerce, do they have the JSON-LD product? Is the JSON-LD product validated? Do they have all the attributes about the product? Are they missing some attributes about the product? Price, size, color, dimensions, description, title, image. Add all the attributes of the image, go to the whole checklist. But I wouldn't. I would only create more content if, let's say, I do kind of mini or little topical map for that section, and I check, okay, what am I missing here? Either it could be possible that we're missing a very important article about that category product or something like that, but that
Like
would be,
product aftercare or something like that.
yeah, or that would be my approach.
Yeah. That makes sense. So essentially, you'd almost avoid opening up new pages and see what you can improve on the existing one and how far that gets it, essentially. And then do you get to a point where you think, right, like at what point do you tick off, right, I think this is as far as that's went. I'm now going to focus on this cluster. Do you typically have like an impression level where you would kind of go, that's grown nicely, let's now focus on this one? Because obviously you've only got a limited amount of time, right? So you need to try and get multiple plates spinning almost. Or at what point do you think that's complete, if that makes sense?
Well, my approach in that would be first, I need to enhance the overall site. Like what technical optimization, content optimization, what I'm going to do that the benefit spread all over the whole site. If not, it doesn't make sense because the equation effort return is not going to be positive. And from that moment, I would focus on, let's say, two fronts. One, the batch of the category optimization, let's say, and the second batch would be like the enhance the site overall, either by minimizing redirects, internal redirects, or forwards, or improving the crawl rate, or I would also improve the web performance optimization. What can be done that we can reduce the time that the page is loaded, this kind of stuff. Imagine that, let's play kind of mathematical game. If on average a web page is 2 megabytes and you reduce it 200 kilobytes, there is 10%.
Yeah.
Imagine 10% less cost per page for Google to crawl your site. That's a lot.
If you then compare that to competitors, your competitor might still be at 2 meg, and you've came up with a new website that is a 1 megabyte, so it's 50% less. You're giving it more reason to want to come back to yours.
Yes. Yeah, so these little things compound over time. If you're lucky between core updates and core updates, you can get a boost.
Yeah.
So, also in the migration process, I remember this from Cora, is try to do the migration in the season with the lowest traffic and try to, let's say, set the server in order to minimize also the crawl rate.
Yeah.
So minimize the crawl rate in the server side in the season with the lowest traffic, and then you do the switch, and then you try to tick
It's
all the boxes
possible.
because, and then when you, let's say, change the settings in the server and more traffic comes, crawl rate is going to increase, and hopefully you.
Interesting. So you would actually limit the crawl rate within what robots or text or HT access sort of stuff. Try and limit the crawlers accessing the site, or you do.
Yes,
Yeah. I didn't think of that, to be fair. So you're almost intentionally restricting the crawlers to reduce the amount of errors that they're going to find, in hope that you can fix them quick enough to then turn on the tap again.
yes, and also what I would do, what I think I'm seeing nowadays is Google, even though you block robots with do not crawl this directory, and you put no index tag robots in the code,
You still see it in server logs.
but the bot is going to keep coming.
Yeah.
And on top of that, if you have user signals, it's like user keep clicking in those profiles. I mean, it's like a ringing bell for bots and keep coming, even though you provide all the signals not to crawl those pages.
Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely see that as well. I've seen that quite a few times in like when just checking through server logs and things like this. Right, so you've answered that question. Okay, so what about, right, so we've now changed the site. It's in a positive ranking state. Give me some do's and don'ts, because people, I think this is the problem. People start getting greedy. Now a site's in a positive ranking state. I think we've even seen it on some examples of Core's stuff where, people have maybe used Core for 12 months, got really a huge success rate, and then they went off on their own, and then they realized that they're in a positive ranking state, so this website can rank for anything, which in theory it does. But then obviously something happens at some point and it tips, right?
Well, my approach was, and is still my approach is, play the infinite game. It's pretty unusual. I mean, when I compare and contrast my approach with other ACOs, because my three oldest clients are 9 years, 8 years, and 5 years. And what I realized in that experience is from time to time, the algorithms are going to demote you, but long term, I mean, if you're not willing to invest at least a year, uh, I don't think that the SEO campaign is going to be successful, because it's like you precondition yourself not to invest the time and the resources in order to make it successful. That would be my approach. I mean, when you see a project growing, positive ranking state, everything's rosy, this is when you have to pause. This is what I do. I mean, I pause and I say, okay, how can we improve? Because the easy way out is more link building or more content, you know? But that's not my approach. I mean, I do encourage everybody that see this that think about, I always start with the same approach. What am I missing? What can I improve in this page?
This, so I was having a conversation yesterday with Constantine, I think you've met,
Yes, I know.
and me and him often have debates. I think every day I pretty much speak to Constantine, and I was saying to him, right, on our site, what should I start publishing next? And he was like, exactly what you said. He went, mate, stop worrying about publishing. Start tweaking, start editing your existing stuff and improving. He's like, you don't like too many people get obsessed with publishing new content. And the reality is, for every one new piece of content you publish, you should have done 20 edits to existing. He was like, just as like chucking random numbers out there, but like that's the balance. He's like, you test, obviously set up something like post hog or something that's tracking user signals, track the user signals via heat maps, stuff like that, and try to improve the user experience in general on every single click that's coming through. And guess what, in time you'll be rewarded, because Google should be seeing through Chrome data or whatever, they should be seeing that happen. And improving those user signals, he says, is the biggest factor for rankings, is user signals.
Yes, I mean, coming back to the publication I did today on LinkedIn, I would say, let me go back to summarize. Let's say over the last 2 years, let's say we did like 4 to 5 changes, nothing more. But we spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time with the client trying to understand what they want to sell in the landing page itself, the call to action, the funnel itself, and then we fine tune a little bit of design, a little bit of copy, a little bit of micro semantics, which means either rewrite a specific section or include related terms or synonyms that we were missing. That's the exercise. I mean, I didn't buy links. I didn't create related content to that target.
Editing that existing page and fine tuning it.
Yes,
Were you using much AI to help fine tune? Do you do much AI stuff, or
no. The approach I do is the one I share. I think it was. I don't remember if I shared it publicly. I shared in little groups in Chamai and the masterminds. It's like every 2 3 months, I check Search Console and I go landing page by landing page. Of course, I track all the changes in all that landing page. And I go back, I do a kind of exercise in order to, it's basically a filter to request to Search Console and identify new terms or terms that increase the impressions. And this is kind of the leading indicator in order to move forward.
mate? You definitely need to use SEO testing or something. I don't know if you've got it for, but this is what SEO testing does. So it spits out a nice email and says this page has gained these new keywords, and these new keywords have X amount of impressions. And then obviously you then notice that they're not present on the page. It says these keywords aren't present on the page. Implement them on the page, and all of a sudden It's exactly what you've just said there, essentially, is like that's doing it on itself rather than you having to dig into it.
Yes, but I am in the process of automating this with.
Right, okay. BigQuery or
Yes, I have a kind of joint venture with a guy you know, where we're connecting Search Console API with BigQuery. When I have enough data, I'm going to have a chat with this guy in order to generate kind of automation related to that. Because my, let's say, manual and traditional process I do with my sites, implemented, let's say, semantic SEO improvement, we want to automate
yeah.
basically both the identification of opportunities and then the recommendations about those opportunities, and not only landing page per landing page, but at bulk. That's our medium long term goal.
So how much would you say? Obviously, we've mentioned a lot so far about like ranking states, and then it's all primarily on page. How much would you say you look at sort of links and link building? How much would you say that has a place? Or at what point would you think, you know what, I've done a great job here. We just need some links.
It might sound odd, but over my, I would say, 9 years in SEO, I only was once forced to buy links because the client forced me to do it. But now I'm in the iGaming industry,
See you in.
and the game is different. Now I have to buy links. But outside iGaming, I do not buy links because, firstly, my filter is I only work with brands that have enough
Good link
power.
already. Yeah.
Second, in the process, in order to assess if it's going to be a success or not, I do my research about how much they invest in their brand, in the PR, and so on and so forth, which is basically.
You know what? I 100% agree with you as well because I've got a friend who is absolutely crushing it. I think he launched his business over a year ago. He's just hit the £1 million mark. Obviously, absolutely crushing it. An awesome guy. He originally started with just paid ads, spending all on brand, doing social media, Google ads. Didn't look at SEO at all. 6 months in, gets me to have a look at SEO. And I'm like, mate, it's the easiest site to rank on the planet because it has all these brand signals, like people coming direct in the browser, loading the site, people searching for the brand, just every brand signal's popping off, and it's like big search volumes. And you just literally you make a tweak, and it's like just small little micro tweaks. Like you've maybe changed a sentence on the page, and all of a sudden you've gained 10,000 impressions. It's ridiculous.
Yes, I remember after what you mentioned, I remember 2 years ago in Chiang Mai, Craig Campbell shared with us a business. It was a brick and mortar business. And he said, I bought the business, I removed everything, only traffic for pay per click. In fact, his presentation in Chiang Mai 2 years ago, he mentioned the project
Yeah.
brand signals, traffic that convert, user signal, and he did the numbers, and he said, I don't need to invest in anything else. He automate the, I don't remember the framework, but I do remember the fact that he mentioned that I don't do any other thing that pay per click because it's traffic that convert, and all the signals for Google are there.
I should tell you what I also, because we're talking about signals again and saving Google money. What I don't get is people who don't invest in the paid ad side, which is literally the only way Google makes money from you is by you spending on paid ads. Wouldn't it make sense, although they will never ever admit to it, wouldn't it make sense that Google might just prioritize a website that's willing to spend some money with them over a website that isn't?
I cannot confirm or deny that, but but I would share another idea. I think I heard about the same event yet.
Is it the
I,
Chiang Mai?
in the Chiang Mai one, Chiang Mai 2000, Chiang Mai 2023. There was a guy who said, I convinced a client for 6 months. He gave me the budget and he focused all the budget in pay-per-click. And the pay-per-click generate the traffic and the user signal and the revenue. And he doesn't do any SEO. So when he ran out of budget, he sit again with the client and say, hey, we started with pay-per-click. You have seen that this is profitable. Give me more budget. And then he started doing SEO 4, 6, or 9 months after that. And like you mentioned also, doing SEO after all those signals, all this historical data is there, it went up like crazy.
Yeah.
So
It's one of the key things I always suggest to anyone I speak to. It's, you should always be spending on paid ads, because at the same time, an SEO can do an amazing job. You know, you could do an absolute stellar job and get the website ranked at number one, but you don't know what keywords are going to convert and generate that return on investment for the business. That's why they should be spending on paid ads, because that will tell them very quickly where they're going to make money. And that'll tell you very quickly what are the main terms we should be optimizing for. And you build a strategy around that, as opposed to going in blind, using Ahrefs, pulling out the same data every other SEO on the planet has access to, and then trying to guess it. Why not just spend it? It's not even that expensive nowadays. They give you free credit for. I'm sure it's like spend $2,000, they give you $2,000. So you get $4,000 a budget, which would tell you what to do month one.
yeah, it's like the pay-per-click data is the North Star. You get that as the beginning and then you move from there.
Exactly. And guess what? If you can make it work and you're making money, the business is happy because they're making money. So keep that
Yes.
going. And then in the same time, start developing the SEO strategy, which will help them make more money. And I assume this is what you've probably done with most of your aged clients. They probably love you for life, because
Yes.
they know you. At the end of the day, they speak to you and you give them a return on investment. Whereas so many SEO agencies go in and they just don't have that mindset. It's like we were talking about it earlier, like a tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision.
And it's just, yeah, it's detrimental.
Traffic alone is not going to give you the traffic without conversion is not going to give you anything.
No, exactly that. Um, so we've talked about positive. We've talked about, well, actually, we haven't really went into that. So I'm going to move slightly off topic into, so you're in the back of Search Console and you've went into crawl stats and you see file types, and let's say GS is, it's a WordPress site and GS is 90% of it. It shouldn't be, but let's say it is. What's your key steps there? What are you then looking at to help improve because I know Chorus is realistically want to get the HTML ratio as high as possible. And let's say HTML is 9%. What are you then looking at? Are you going into, obviously you'd click and see what scripts are loading. Are you then trying to reduce the amount of scripts down so it's all like loading from one script? Are you blocking scripts in robots.txt or trying to stop it being crawled? What are you doing to see best bang for buck and to change that ratio?
Well, first I try to assess the overall state. Let's assume I have no data. Let's assume I just have Search Console data.
Yeah.
I can crawl the site, but I do not have access to the server at all, and I don't have communication with the developers or the sysadmin, whatever.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to assess is how a bot crawl the page and render the page, and after that, I can go in the DOM. I can use Search Console and trigger the page in order to make like a kind of analysis. First of all, is the page crawlable and it can be rendered? And if it cannot be rendered, I tried different ways in order to guess now, because Google over time has been I mean, we cannot see now the cache version of the page. Google deactivate JavaScript in the browser. So over time, you have to. It's a fun game for me, which is try to guess what's going on. So what I do now is I look at the code and I analyze the header in order to see if there is some JavaScript that is blocking everything.
Yeah.
Because there might be some JavaScript that is blocking everything, and if that JavaScript get a lot of time, it could, let's say, put the crawler off, something like that. So you can use Chrome or Firefox, load everything, check the time, check the timeline,
The waterfall feature.
the waterfall, and then you can spot at a glance like, hey, there's like either a massive 404, too much JavaScript, or this JavaScript it could be generating this issue, and then you focus on that because it could be so many things.
With that in mind, then are you then potentially trying to remove them out the header, put them in the footer if possible, like deferring them maybe so they load after the DOM? Is that what you're trying to do, or
I also
yeah?
disable CSS to see the structure of the page overall, because maybe in the header they're loading massive stuff and then everything is displaced to the bottom. Then I compare and contrast with the crawling because maybe, I don't know, the content is in the thousands of pixels below what the plate they should be, and things like that.
Do you
Because
do you have much weight on the kilobytes as well? So do you try to get your schema? Was it the first 40 kilobytes of the page load? You want ideally your title tag and your schema to be loaded within the first 40 kilobytes.
yes, I mean, I always recommend to everybody I work with, and pretty much I'm going to share what I do is make sure that the meta tags are in the header as soon as possible and in the right order, like title, description, and so on and so forth. Secondly, always the structured data I put it on top, not on the bottom, because if the crawl do not have budget, at least it's more likely they find the
Feeling it
JavaScript
quite quick.
in the header than in the footer.
And would you usually position that? So when I'm positioning that, I usually do title, your meta information, and then straight away it is schema, like the script schema script on. That's typically how I do it. Or do you usually put that even above the title and meta description? So
No. And what I would do also is understand how the JavaScript are loaded, in what order, because maybe there are so many requests to JavaScript that the bot don't even have time to go to the meta tags, because all these frameworks with so much JavaScript is a nightmare. Either I try to communicate with the developers and say, hey, could you put the meta tags before all these massive JavaScript, because it's going to delay the time from the bot to digest that data.
no, it's good. It's really good to know. So I think we'll move on to server logs now. So I've got a few notes of questions because it's quite nice to actually speak to an SEO. Okay, so you've got some server logs. And now it's amazing. I also refer to them as access logs because it's amazing how much people just don't know what a server log is. So obviously, this is typically you get them from your web hosts. If you're using a shared web host, chances are they're restricting them to maybe 1 day rollovers. I believe Kinsta is a 3 day rollover. So you have to create a cron job to extract it and save it into a different folder because it's going to roll over every 3 days otherwise. Now, what are you typically looking for? Well, A, what would you say is your minimum amount of time on a server log? And then B, what are you typically looking for?
Firstly, each project is different. If the site has a lot of traffic, I limit to a week, because if not, the size of the file is going to be so
Huge.
big.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge. If the size is not that big, I try to get a month of data.
Yeah.
And then I filter by Google bot in smartphone, and then I try to understand why the bot is spending so much time in a page that in theory has no value, and try to identify either 404 internal 301 redirects, all these kind of issue.
So with
Why?
that in mind, are you then, so let's say you find a page that it's just a random page, and for whatever reason, and I've definitely seen this happen before, Google bot just is visiting this page. Are you then going, okay, let's have a look at this page. Let's put some internal links higher up on the page because obviously that then might encourage it to visit other sections. And then do you wait for a week and see if the other sections have then increased? If they have increased, obviously that must then be working. Or do you kind of just go, do we need this? Should I through and redirect this page to another page to encourage that?
Well, I use that approach, but from time to time, even though in theory you do the right things, bots keeps crawling pages that it doesn't make sense at all. It's like, but anyway, I try to first focus on what's important, which is fixing as much issues as possible, and then with those kind of situation where you are trying to guess why the bots are wasting so much time in those pages. If the page it doesn't make sense to keep it there either because it's not a money page, then I consider a redirect because at least you can transfer the value to somebody else.
No, that makes sense. And are you looking at, like, I know in Screaming Frog it's CO2 emissions, right? That's trying to tell you, how much it's actually costing the server to, store and render. Are you kind of looking at that as well and almost the weight of it when it comes to the crawl? And then trying to identify ones that are maybe a little bit too heavy and trying to improve that, or are you not really looking that granular at it?
No, I try again going back to what we mentioned about blocking. You block something in robots.txt and the bot keep coming. At the end of the day, they're going to do whatever they are programmed to do. What I'm trying is to first minimize cost, second fix issues, and third transfer value. And with these three approaches, I try to, let's say, get the most out of it because sometimes you don't even understand what they do.
Yeah. So let's say we'll go back to ranking states because I quite enjoy talking ranking states because it's just interesting to see how people get out of different ones. So let's say you're in a negative. So this is the interesting part. You're in a negative ranking state, but if you're going through page by page, query by query, and you're seeing that one page actually isn't in a negative ranking state and it's in either a neutral or a positive, what essentially you were saying prior is that's when you would focus more on improving that cluster, and then with the hope that it's going to change the site, the negative ones in general, with time. Is that kind of the hope?
Yes, I use it the analogy of the anchor because a negative section, let's say, a category of a set of URLs in your site, if they are in a negative ranking state, they're gonna be an anchor to the whole site,
Yeah.
and eventually you have to make decisions because it's like one category is gathering more and more traffic, and one category is losing traffic, and then you have to decide if it makes sense to spend more time and resources in order to try to get rid of the or reverse the negative ranking state, but you have to do something either radical because if not, you're not gonna. I mean, you have a limited time to reverse that because eventually it's gonna die. And either redesign the topical map or create a new section that from scratch in order to start gathering more impression, more traffic, and eventually kill directly that section, or improving step by step the whole section and waiting until the next code update. That's the overall approach.
And have you seen, it's actually quite interesting, you mentioned earlier how, like, being involved in certain websites for so many years, I actually had the same debate with a friend who he's kind of exited SEO, but he's got website e-commerce stores that do good money and It's all paid ads. He says throughout the years of having these e-commerce stores, like you're talking like maybe 7 years, it's actually surprising to see it just comes and goes. He says like he sees organic traffic goes high, organic traffic goes low, organic traffic goes high, organic traffic goes low. And he says he sees that time and time again, and he hasn't actually touched the website. It's just with the paid ads. Is that something that you're seeing quite a bit as well?
I mean, from time to time, there are pages or entire section that you lose traffic because it makes sense because Google could not rank one specific site in first position all the time
Forever.
or forever because it's always is such as life, you know. But if long term you take care of the site or you take care of the brand or eventually you have all the ups and downs, but long term you're going to win. For instance, a month in February, I started working with a company in Berlin, and these guys have been like over 3 years doing nothing in SEO. But the brand is very powerful. It's between 10,000 and 15,000 clicks a day, only brand terms.
Wow.
The guy that now is the product manager 4 years ago was my colleague in SEO. So he switched from SEO to product, and because he was so focused on product, SEO was not implemented at all for over 3 years. And of course, the traffic suffered, even though the brand is very powerful. But the good thing is now doing very little, we can go back on track.
And see hopefully big jumps as well with very little effort.
Yes, because they have the data year over year, and 30-40% decrease is a lot of traffic for a site with, you know, this amount of traffic on a daily basis. And but again, it's like the whole universe of no brand keywords is huge compared with brand terms. So the opportunities are amazing.
Is there any sweet spot? Because I know you keep mentioning brand keywords and no brand keywords. So let's say, for instance, your brand keywords are getting loads of. Well, actually, that wouldn't correlate well. I was going to say loads of impressions, but not many clicks. Well, that wouldn't really work because if you're getting loads of, I assume your brand keywords are going to be your highest click through keywords because you should be number one. And if your impressions are going up, chances are people are clicking. But is there any like minimum amount that you tend to like to see on like a brand keyword basis?
I'm gonna share with you my oldest client. He's an e-commerce. They bought not an IMD, like close enough to IMD, but the main entity they want to rank for is not the IMD. So what we've done over 9 years is try to rank the main entity and then build content around related entities. And now what I'm doing is over the last 3 years, I know the key entities I want to rank for and the attributes about those entities. And then I connected I would say, four entities we rank for,
Yeah,
and then generate like a kind of attributes around that and keep expanding from that. So if you start from scratch and you don't have brand power, you can build step by step these connections among entities and then create a kind of brand around that. Because if search demand is there, you have like kind of protection.
yeah. And do you think that's what a lot of the EMDs benefit with when you've managed to acquire an EMD? It's because it's already got the search demand.
Yes.
Yeah,
And if you build kind of brand around those searches surrounding the EMD, then you can grow. And this is what I'm going to do in the iGaming thing.
so it's also what I did for many years in iGaming. EMD domains. That's what was our bread and butter. I think we had at the time of me exiting, we had about 45 domains. Sorry, active websites. I dare say about 25, maybe 30 of them were EMDs. So a lot of EMDs, a lot of experience with EMDs. They're probably my favorite way of ranking, if I'm being 100% honest.
Yes.
just again because it's almost like it's kind of like when you're what we just touched on there when you're going into Search Console and looking for branded search, an AMD already has branded search because it's the AMD, right? But again, obviously, it's just making sure that it ranks or attributes it. And I guess that's why you're on about connecting the entities, or the various attributes to the entity as well, help solidify your position of being the AMD.
Yes, the more historical data you have, the better. So that's why my approach is long term. Because if you push uh, too fast, too greedy, it might breaks.
Yeah.
But if you create the signals over time, this kind of more natural approach, and algorithms give you a little bit more confidence, let's say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because you cannot. I mean, think about. I don't remember. Think about that. Each domain is like a kind of business. Only a few business since inception time, since they are born, grow naturally very fast. Only a few, only a handful of them. The other ones either grow very slowly or die.
yeah.
Why in the internet is pretty much the same. Not all business can be successful, fast growing business. So Google, let's say that Google have to assess which site should rank or not. Let's say in the link building process, and now let's say relearning. I'm not gonna generate 10 links in a week, and then I'm gonna be like 3 4 months with no links. I have to create like kind of steady approach with content creation and so on and so forth. The same logic is for any business online or any site.
So with that in mind, though, so I'm going to chuck a little curveball here. You could say the natural process of bigger business is usually they do digital PR and stuff like this. They have an influx of links, and then they're done for the next quarter. Then they do another batch because they have a next budget next quarter, next budget next quarter, and that actually sometimes in some industries you see that sort of growth is almost like you have to match that level of growth because obviously that's what I assume Google makes a bit of a template on what it expects to see from that industry, if that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, my second oldest client, 7 years, the company was bought in 2021. And since then, brand terms have been steadily decreasing.
Yeah.
Guess what? The SEO has been decreasing as well. Now they're for certain terms, for let's say like a batch of keywords. Now they realize, hey, competitors are doing PR campaigns, marketing campaigns, promotion. And so, and the way we convinced, let's say, the management was we went to AdWords and all the competitors are like this, like growing like crazy, and we are like kind of steadily decreasing the brand power and brand searches. So, and then you do an open question like, hey, why Google should choose us instead of the other guys if nobody is looking for us anymore as much as in the past? So now, hopefully, we are creating new landing pages, like new verticals, and of course, marketing campaigns and PR campaigns are going to be launched.
Natural sort of search. No, it's interesting. It's mad how like basically I think when you start to get to a high level in SEO, you almost become um, a general marketer. I would say more so than just an SEO. Like it's obviously your goal is SEO and ranking, but you almost have to have an open, so not tunnel vision, an open eye for the other verticals that are going to come into play there. And I think that I'm seeing that more and more, to be fair. Most interviews with high level guys, it's not always just about keywords and links. It's, user signals, brand signals, improving everything.
Yes, I have the kind of my term sheet here I use every day to work. Most of my time is communicating with clients, explaining what I'm going to do and why to do it. I would say over the last 2 years, if I analyze my real time in the rankings and the analysis is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the communication process, strategy, why we do this, we have to connect marketing with that, is more of my day-to-day job.
Yeah. It's actually funny because like one of the consultancy roles that I have is or that I do, whenever I go in with anyone on consultancy, I say to them up front, if you want a glossy report and you want me to spend time doing a nice report for you, I'm not the guy. You go to this agency over here, they'll give you a lovely report. You'll not get any results, but you'll have a nice report. That'll tick that box for you. If you want results, then leave me alone. I'll work on it, and we can have a half an hour call. I can show you Search Console impression data. I can show you all the data, what we've been doing, and that'll be the results. It's not. I don't like doing PDFs where it's a 60-page PDF that I've manipulated to hell to try and justify the money. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not how it
I
works.
couldn't agree with you more. My system is before we start working, I communicate with them the way the communication between us is going to be. The documentation is going to be like this, the reporting is going to be like that. The reporting is nothing more than a video,
Yeah,
a 2-3 minutes video with Loom,
yeah.
and that's it. And
And that's
this is,
just talking through what you've done, maybe some
yes.
console data done.
And the good thing is you reduce the emails, you reduce friction,
Yep.
you have more time to think, you have more time to analyze. The customer is happier because, to be honest, they don't. What I learned that most reporting that people don't see the report, people don't see the this, neither the spreadsheet or the nothing. They don't see that. They just want the validation, let's say, or the
Are we moving in the right direction?
yeah, that's it. When they understand that is, I mean, it's more fun also because it's like imagine generating a monthly report for all these people. I mean, it would be like 10-15 hours wasted every
Yeah,
month for
exactly.
what?
Exactly. So I'm aware, I've just looked at the time there. We've been talking for quite a while, haven't we? Let's summarize it. I want to finish off then with obviously because you've got some clients there who, that is a long time. What, 9 years was your maximum one? 9 years, 7 years,
9, 7, and 5.
5? So for anyone else who's doing SEO consultancy or maybe even an agency owner, what would you say is your biggest tip to them to help keep that client on? Because I know most SEO agencies churn rate is probably 6 months. And that's me being lenient, like maybe 6 months. It could be less. What would you say is the key and that's helped you succeed?
What helped me out over all these years is try to prepare in advance for what they're gonna need. So they do not request information for you. You deliver the information and the proposal before they even think about it. Let's say nowadays AI is say the flavor of the day. Every time my client mention about AI, what I do is to go back in time and say ask questions. Do you know when ChatGPT was launched? Do you remember? Do you remember when Gemini was launched? Do you remember where all these times? When I forced themselves to search on Google, and when they realized the time that Google promised AI and the product hasn't been fine-tuned or optimized yet, how ChatGPT have evolved and Perplexity and all this too, and they realize it's been more than 2 years now. Guess what? Nothing much have changed. So I'm not saying that I don't pay attention to what's going on. I don't say I'm doing research and test and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is, in 2 years, nothing big happened. Maybe the next 2 years something happened, but don't get mad. And from time to time, every 3 to 6 months, I just generate a kind of, hey guys, due to the new releases and where I do believe the industry is heading, I would recommend you to do this, this, and that because that. And then they take it into consideration.
Yeah.
That's my approach.
So almost like being the forefront of it, but you're being in control of the narrative.
Yes. I mean, I have to, this week has been, let's say, I've learned a lot in the mindset and communication because I got one nugget from one idea in a WhatsApp group in a rank and rent cohort. And that idea triggered a research that gave me an insight that I could share with all my clients and all these guys in the cohort and relate to other component, which is nothing more than freshness in local SEO. I mean, how if you keep the freshness, Google Business Profile Manager, landing pages, local signals, so on and so forth, you are ahead of the game because
Pregnant.
most people is set it and forget it, set it, forget it, and build links. So that would be another approach in the not only in the local SEO but in the holistic approach.
No, that's all good advice. Very, very good. And obviously, we're nearly an hour and a half in. Jesus, this is went, hasn't it? This went by fast. So, how can people get hold of you, Lewis?
They can find me on LinkedIn. They can type my name.
Obviously, I'll put everything at the bottom of the video as well. Have the team grab it.
I'm not very active on social media, to be honest. Just
You're
on
doing the
LinkedIn
job,
from time
man.
to time.
You're doing the job. That's why.
Yeah, I like the a guy the other day said to me, "You are the kind of guy that always on the trenches."
Yeah.
I like that place. I mean, this is where I've been all my life, to be honest. The day we met in Birmingham in July 2023, it was the first, no, it was my second time in an international SEO event.
Wow.
The first time was in 2016 in Milan, and I went there to meet Billy Slosky in person. And from 2016 until 2023, I was playing the game, and I forgot to mention I went to Birmingham also to meet Corey personally.
Right.
So another thing I would advise is go to SEO events because guess what? Almost 2 years later, I met this guy. I'm doing a podcast with him, and who knows what could happen if you go to an SEO event and you hang out with someone, meet someone. It could be like the beginning of a long-term relationship.
I also think just for like in general, expanding your horizons. Like you don't know what you don't know, and like there's a lot of like knowledge out there, and people, especially if you're more of a one man band or you might only have a small team, you are limited by time. And if you can share what you find working in cohorts or various groups that with people you meet at conferences as well, it just all helps. It helps with your obviously test everything. Like don't just take verbatim what someone says because again it varies niche to niche, but
Yes,
it at least helps you give some ideas or some test ideas to run, right?
absolutely.
All right, excellent. What I'll do, we're just approaching the 1 hour 30, so I'm going to terminate there. It's been great speaking to you, Lewis. And then obviously, I'm sure we'll meet again soon.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope to see you soon.